This is Nicky G and welcome to Better Commander. How's everybody feeling about these Unfinity cards? We all knew they were coming, and are we prepared? Alright, so I was playing a sweet game of Commander the other day. It was a 5-player monstrosity, and in the end, no one won because the game went for 11 hours and we all entered a coma. Anyways, one of my opponents had Comet, the stellar pup, on the battlefield. I kind of ignored it because I never bothered to read it, and it was such a big game with so many things going on. This little dog planeswalker ended up doing 24 damage to take one player out and created 8 squirrel tokens due to some lucky rolls on the 6-sided die. Let me read this thing. Comet Stellar Pup is 2 red and a white. Legendary planeswalker Comet. Initial loyalty is 5. 1 or 2 on the die plus 2. Create 2 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. They gain haste until end of turn. If you roll a 3, it's a -1. Then return a card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. 4 or 5, Comet Stellar Pup deals damage equal to the number of loyalty counters on him to a creature or player, then -2. And then 6 is +1. You may activate Comet Stellar Pup's loyalty ability 2 more times this turn. The rolling and re-rolling, of course, took a long time. It was fun for the person rolling. Everyone else just kind of sat there waiting, and the turn took a long time. Now, whatever I say in this video, I'm not judging anyone or trying to cast anything that was said in a bad light. I love the guys in my play group enough to make them feel wildly uncomfortable. Anyways, one of the groups said, "This is why I don't like these uncards. They're really fun and goofy, but once you see this once, I'll spend resources just so I don't have to sit through the rolling over and over again. I don't like the flavor, I just want fantasy in my fantasy game." I had ignored Unfinity up until that point, but it made me pause and take note to check the other Unfinity cards that are legal, just so I can accurately form an opinion and be prepared for these cards when they hit the battlefield. Now, I'm not going to read every card in the set, but let me highlight a few that we are likely to see at some point in a game of Commander. And we got Saw in half, 2 and a black for an instant. Destroy target creature. If that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their base power is half that creature's power, and their base toughness is half that creature's toughness. Round up each time. Outside the flavor, this card is really good if you have a powerful creature with a static effect, like a Consecrated Sphinx or Sire of Stagnation. The cool thing about this is that you can do it in response to some removal effect as well. I think this card's awesome. Space Bellerin, 2 white and a blue for a legendary planeswalker. Jace, loyalty 3, has Space Sculptor, divides the battlefield into alpha, beta, and gamma sectors. If a creature isn't assigned to a sector, its controller assigns it to one. Opponents assigned first. +1, creatures in each sector can be blocked this turn only by creatures in the same sector. -1, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature in the sector of your choice. And -5, destroy all creatures in the sector of your choice. I wouldn't want to see this across from me, but each opponent gets to assign their sector so they can split them up. The Jace player assigns whatever they want to do. The problem with a card like this is the amount of time everyone in a 4-player game is going to take to figure out their sectors. Visually representing this somehow, you'd have to bring colored tokens or something, or put them in right, middle, or left areas of your playmat or whatever. This is just kind of a big pain in the butt. Next we got Magar of the Magic Strings, 1 black and a red for a legendary creature Minotaur Performer. It's a 3/3. 1 black and a red. Note the name of target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard and put it onto the battlefield face down. It's a 3/3 creature with whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may create a copy of the card with the noted name. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. And if this creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. One of the dudes in my group is thinking about building this, and it's interesting. Again, it's more fiddling around with face down cards, but we do that with morph and transforming cards anyway. This is an interesting build around that doesn't seem objectionable to me at all. Then you have Starlight Spectacular, 2 white for an enchantment, has Parade. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose creatures you control 1 at a time until each creature you control has been chosen. Each of those creatures gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature chosen before it. This is just a dope anthem effect, but having to do this every turn at the beginning of combat will get old quick. If you're in a go-wide deck, this is awesome, I'd run it. Physically, you can just keep them in order and stick new creatures in there as they enter the battlefield. It's an interesting effect. It's interesting that the creatures don't have to attack that turn either. Exchange of Words is 1 blue for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose 2 target creatures. For as long as Exchange of Words remains on the battlefield, exchange the text boxes of those creatures. This is a really good way to screw up someone's game plan and advance your own. It's very cheap for this effect. Consider Switcheroo, which costs 5 mana. I have no problem with this. It's basically a cultural exchange type effect for 3 mana. I mean, this is a small sample of the legal cards, but I haven't really seen too many others that would be worth it to include in a Commander deck. Some of the other ones are about rolling dice or opening attractions. I'm not even going to get into that. I'll just have to figure that out if I ever see them. So in the game I was talking about earlier, I was tempted to kind of rail on the Comet player, because it's so goofy. It took such a long time and was so unbalanced. But I decided to look at my own deck and the stuff I was doing first. You see, I was running Abaddon the Despoiler, who's even more tangentially related to MTG. So for context, Abaddon the Despoiler is 2 blue, black, and a red for a legendary creature, a Astartes warrior. It's a 5/5 with trample. Has Mark of Chaos Ascendant. During your turn, spells you cast from your hand with mana value X or less have Cascade, where X is the total amount of life your opponents have lost this turn. So on my upkeep during that game, I had a Stormfist Crusader. At one point I had a Heralds of Tzeentch and cascaded twice, once into a Fiery Confluence that had to resolve, and then I got a trigger off a Passionate Archaeologist. I also had a suspended Delayed Blast Fireball that everyone had to remember that I had a suspend card exiled. That turn took forever too, so I really had nothing to complain about there. I mean, then it kind of hit me, Magic, and by extension even more so, Commander, takes forever. Everything takes forever. You have to keep track of tokens, dice, the dungeon, the monarch, counters, loyalty, exile zones, face up, face down. It really is a different game than it was 10 years ago. It's intellectually exhausting, and the exasperation with Unfinity may be more a manifestation of that. I don't know. Why don't you guys tell me what you think? Y'all are pretty smart, I can tell. I know you have plans and schematics somewhere in the hobbit hole that you call home about Infinity. Is Unfinity a step too far, or is it fine? I mean, honestly, I think it's fine compared to all the other nonsense that we have going on. I mean, the Comet Planeswalker making 8 tokens and dealing 24 damage seems pretty tame compared to the stuff I try to pull at every opportunity. Let me know what you guys think. Snicky G from Better Commander, signing off.